In the past week or so, God has been putting together this picture of the next thing he wants to reveal, I guess. He has been speaking with me regarding the fall of America and the fact that America, the false prophet of the United States, has to fall to the Antichrist, or more specifically, the image of the Antichrist, which will be the next global superpower. And that's Israel. Newsflash, the image of the Antichrist is Israel. The very thing that stupid America and stupid Christian Zionists are worshiping is the very thing that's going to rise and persecute. Oh, no. They love America. America is Israel's best friend. Okay, well, let's read about it. The foreword is a Jewish newsletter, and the article I'm going to read to you is What Do Israelis Think About Americans? Start with disdain. It's right there in the title. Though Israel is a famously fractious society, Israelis tend to agree on one thing. Their strongest supporters are inherently dupable people. Most Israelis think Americans are pro-Israel and we can sell them anything, especially mud from the Dead Sea, said David Lifshitz, the lead writer for the Israeli comedy show Eretz Nehederet, or Wonderful Land, or just regular mud with a Dead Sea sticker on it. They think you're stupid. And you know why? Because we've proven ourselves to be stupid. But it's not just American tourists whom many Israelis see as guileless. American foreign policy is held up to similar scrutiny here, even as Israel receives billions of dollars in foreign aid from the United States each year. Think about their character that they can receive this from stupid people who are worshiping them. Americans are perceived to be naive, especially when it comes to the Middle East, said Yuri Dromi, who served as a spokesman for the Yitzhak Rabin and Shimon Peres governments. It is a bad neighborhood, and it seems like they just don't realize it. The naivete Israelis perceive in Americans is not just something they believe only Israel's adversaries exploit. Israelis believe they can do so too, and do. Oh, what great people, oh my goodness, the chosen. In a secretly recorded video of a 2001 discussion with a group of terror victims in the Ofra settlement in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, now Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu laid out this widely held perception. I know what America is, Netanyahu told the settlers. America is a thing that can be easily moved in the right direction. Hey guys, is this being written by anti-Semites, or who's this being written by? This is coming from their own mouths. Wake up. On political hiatus at the time after an election defeat, the once and future Israeli leader was responding to a skeptical settler who asked how he would respond to the global condemnation that could be anticipated if he were, as proposed, to launch a large-scale attack on Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and Gaza to counter the Second Intifada. They will not bother us, he said of the Americans. Let's suppose they, the Bush administration, will say something. So they say it. So what? They don't care about you guys. They don't care what you think. Benjamin Netanyahu is going to do whatever he wants. He's made it very clear. And he's even spoken in that language. Let me be clear. We are not going to be told what to do. 80% of the Americans support us. It's absurd. We have such great support there. And we say, what shall we do with this support? The paradox that Israelis rely on and expect American support, yet don't trust American judgment on Middle Eastern affairs, helps explain the recent U.S.-Israel dust-up in Washington. On March 3rd, that clash reached its climax when Netanyahu appeared before a joint meeting of Congress to warn the assembled lawmakers against their own president's negotiations, together with other countries, with Iran ahead of a possible deal on that country's nuclear program. Israelis were split on the value of Netanyahu's trip to Washington, which was widely seen as a play to the prime minister's right-wing base before the March 17th election. But most Israelis were in agreement about their premier's message. About 3/4 of Israelis don't trust Obama to be a reliable ally and to deal effectively with the Iranian nuclear threat, said Eitan Gilboa, a senior researcher at the Begin Sadat Center for Strategic Studies. That opinion was evident on the Israeli street the day of Netanyahu's speech to Congress. Despite all the administration's measures on behalf of Israel's security, that Netanyahu took pains to laud. Obama is very hostile against Israel, said Effie Hassout, a 50-year-old hairdresser who was smoking on the patio outside his salon in downtown Jerusalem. He tried to please the Arab world at our expense. He doesn't understand them. Part of the reason Israelis think Americans just don't get the Middle East, said Alex Mintz, a political psychologist at IDC Herzliya, is that they consider themselves close front-row observers of American foreign policy in the region, and they have watched the Middle East grow more violent and unstable in recent years, he said. Of course, Israelis themselves have been much more than just spectators in the region with a massive impact of their own. But according to Mintz, whose new book, The Polythink Syndrome, deals with recent U.S. policy in the Middle East, Israelis are skeptical of American intentions. I mean, would you be skeptical of someone who was like, hey, guess what? You don't know me from Adam, but you're going to die for me. Here, let me catch you up. An Antichrist is going to rise and is going to persecute and kill you. Don't you feel honored? Here, let me give you some money because I'm bent on buying my way into heaven and blessing Israel all the way to heaven. I mean, why would they trust stupid people who don't even have the sense to seek truth in their own lives? Why would they trust you? But see, these are unscrupulous people. What they're doing is they're just taking your money and exploiting you. The Polythink Syndrome deals with recent U.S. policy in the Middle East. Israelis are skeptical of American intentions, except when it comes to supporting them. These are their own people saying it. Israelis are appreciative of the strong and solid relationship with the U.S., but they also caution against subsequent moves of the U.S. in the region because they don't think those are successful or led to good outcomes, he said. The only reason why they're appreciative of the strong and solid relationship is because the U.S., Christian Zionism, is stupid enough to keep giving them $3.3 billion a year and to not question anything they do because of a false interpretation of Scripture. Basically, the United States is too stupid to be a threat, all in the name of Christian Zionism. Too stupid to be a threat. Yet there's another reason that Israelis don't trust Americans, and it has to do with the wider, powerful strain of mistrust in Israeli society. Israelis grow up with the expression of never be a friar, a pushover or a loser, someone who can be taken for a ride. Ari Ben-Ziv wrote in his 2001 book, The Xenophobe's Guide to the Israelis, this omnipresent need to not be a friar can be traced back to 2,000 years of being a struggling minority and also the Middle Eastern neighborhood rule that everything is negotiable. Some Israelis think of American tourists and American immigrants in particular as friars. Okay, we need to pause for a minute. We need to look at this. Is this the way that God told us to live? Because we know that people are going to take advantage of us and we're supposed to turn the other cheek. Are we supposed to be vigilant and always trying to get the best deal and always trying to negotiate with people, or are we supposed to give to those who ask of us? This is not biblical mentality. This is pagan mentality. This is greed mentality. You want to tell me these are the chosen people? People who think like this? People who are chosen. People who are Israel are of every ethnicity, every race, live in every corner of this globe, and they are identified by doing what God actually commanded. This mentality is in opposition to what God commanded. This is a vigilant, looking out for me mentality. I don't trust God mentality. I'm going to get mine mentality. I'm going to exploit others mentality. Those who are Israel are those who actually do what God commanded. This is the way that pagans think. God's people are of every race, every nation, all throughout the world, and they're defined as those who do the will of God, not those who make up their own rules, not those who exploit other people because they're so stupid and believe these ridiculous things, that there's a race or a nation in some select area of the world. They're capitalizing on it, and they're telling you from their own mouths, this is how they feel about stupid Christian Zionism. Some Israelis think of American tourists and American immigrants in particular as friars. In a 1998 study of American Jewish immigrants to Israel by Linda Renee Block, one interviewee said he felt that Israelis saw him as having made the ultimate friar move by moving to Israel in the first place. In their eyes, he fell for Israel's sales pitch and traded the relative ease of American life for Israeli instability. An American might respond with the saying, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, and observe that this outlook, with deep roots in the American psyche, rebuts the Israeli stereotype of Americans as ever trusting. But for many Israelis, the question is, why trust anyone even once? The fear of being taken advantage of manifests in myriad ways. Listen, don't justify this. Do not sit and justify this and say, oh, well, look at everything they've been through, and therefore this is the reason why they're this way. Everybody's been through something. God doesn't say, well, if you've been through a lot, then go ahead and adapt the fearful way of pagans and don't trust me. Go ahead and exploit everybody. After all, they deserve it because they're stupid. God doesn't say that. The same covenant goes for everyone. Turn the other cheek, give to those who ask of you, and trust God to take care of you. That's not the way they're living. That is not their mentality. The fear of being taken advantage of manifests in myriad ways. Israelis have a reputation as hardcore bargainers, and they're known to cheat on their taxes, both because they can and because they think they're getting a bad deal from the government as it is. I don't know, what did God say? Did he say pay your taxes? Yes, he did. On the political level, Israelis don't trust their leaders to say what they mean, and they don't trust their adversaries either. Israelis think Arabs are liars, said Amin Kaveri, a political scientist with IDC Herzliya. I don't think Arabs are liars, but a lot of Israelis think so. They say they never mean what they say. This deeply held cynicism flies in the face of American statecraft, Dromi said. There is something admirable in the American approach to the world. It is a sense of decency, and you expect your partners and your opponents to be fair, he said. If they tell you something, they must be telling the truth. They are going to keep their word. Of course, that has not always been the American approach. President Ronald Reagan's visceral distrust of the Russians led him to adopt the Russians' own proverb, trust but verify, as the cornerstone of his negotiations with the Soviet Union. But with this principle in hand, he did in fact reach successful nuclear arms agreements with America's foremost global adversary in talks with the Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev. And of course, in the case of Iran, America acted covertly with Britain to oust that country's troubled but democratically elected government and reinstall the Shah of Iran as ruler in 1953. Still, many Israelis fundamentally disagree with what they take to be the American approach, especially when it comes to the Iranians. Most Israelis will tell you they are bluffing and all they want to do is gain time. And then they are going to spit in our face, says Dromi. The fact that Israelis see their benefactor as overly credulous also breeds resentment in some corners of Israeli society. In recent years, some right-wing Israelis and their supporters have been increasingly vocal about the idea that Israeli self-determination is put at risk when America picks up the defense tab. I think generally we need to free ourselves from it, Naftali Bennett, chair of the Jewish Home Party, told the Jewish press in 2013. We have to do it responsibly since I'm not aware of all aspects of the budget. I don't want to say let's give it up, but our situation today is very different from what it was 20 or 30 years ago. According to Dromi, for most Israelis, there is, in the end, an understanding of their country's current reality, for better or for worse. If you wake an Israeli in the middle of the night and say, who's your best friend in the whole world, they will say the United States of America. In his March 3rd speech, however, Netanyahu warned that Israel would stand alone if it had to. We're no longer scattered among the nations, powerless to defend ourselves, he told the U.S. lawmakers. Oh, goodness. This is why he's using a statement from the Word and claiming that in 1948 that Israel is no longer scattered among the nations. Guys, Israel is scattered among the nations because Israel are those who do the will of God. This is not Israel. He thinks that his militia is Israel, and he's an idiot. Listen, they think we're stupid. I don't think he's very intelligent. He does not know the Word, nor does he believe in it. And I think that that is the definition of a fool. He does not have the sense to understand that the reason why he has power is because God has given him power. And when God is done using him to expose and foil counterfeit Christianity, his wrath is going to be directed to him. We're no longer scattered among the nations, powerless to defend ourselves, he told the U.S. lawmakers. This is why, as Prime Minister of Israel, I can promise you one more thing. Even if Israel has to stand alone, Israel will stand. Boy, that $3.3 million a year really made him a little big for his britches. But this is the monster that America created in its stupid counterfeit doctrine. In many ways, this image of Israel, oh my gosh, I can't even believe that it says this image of Israel. That is not by mistake. In many ways, this image of Israel as the Jewish bunker flies in the face of much of what the original labor Zionists declared they were trying to achieve in reconstructing Jewish life in a nation state, not just in terms of security, but also psychologically. Yitzhak Rabin, perhaps the last classical labor Zionist leader of Israel, sought to convince both his own people and the broader world that Jews had left behind the ghetto mentality that labor Zionists felt infected Jewish consciousness in Europe over many centuries. Israel, he declared in his first speech to the Knesset on becoming prime minister in 1992, is no longer a people that dwells alone. Interesting. So they took all this help and they haven't risen in humility. They've risen in arrogance and dominance, and we're taking our power. But back to the hair salon, Hasut was with Bennett. If I depend on your support, I should do what you tell me to do, he said. The Israeli government doesn't need the support that America gives them. Why do they take the money? Why can't they just say, we don't need this money? Don't tell us what to do. We're already a country for many years. We can be independent. Will Israel be able to fend for itself in such circumstances? Of course, he said. So maybe we won't have F-16s. All right, so you heard it there from their own mouths. That's what they have to say. This is how they feel. This is their history. No one should say that this is anti-Semitic unless, of course, they're self-hating Jews. I forgot that that's a thing. So then I went to Google to type in, why do Israelis hate Christians? Because I know they do. If they hate America, this is the way that they feel. They also hate Christians. We've seen that this is true. That Orthodox Jews are spitting on counterfeit Christians who are carrying giant crosses into the street. And actually, they have reason to hate counterfeit Christianity, though they don't make the distinction between true Christians and counterfeit Christianity. And I'm going to tell you why. Because counterfeit Christianity, Catholicism, threw them in ghettos, made them wear yellow bonnets, took everything away, including their children, completely stripped them, persecuted them, killed them, and made them live in ghettos. So there's a whole history here. But here's the interesting thing. I go to type this in, and what comes out? An AI overview. There's no evidence that Israelis hate Christians, and it's important to remember that people of all faiths can have a variety of beliefs and opinions, and not all Israelis share the same views on Christianity. I'm asking about Israelis, those in Israel. And I'm aware of that, but there is a general consensus that they hate Christians. They keep taking their money, they call them their BFF, but they hate Christians. Let me ask you a question. How would you feel if someone came up to you and was like, you're going to die for me? Aren't you honored? You would think that they are an outright delusional idiot. And that's what these people think of counterfeit Christianity, Christian Zionists. They don't even believe they don't share the same beliefs. Some of them are regurgitating the stupid beliefs of Christian Zionists because they're exploiting it, because it's convenient for them. Well, one person says because they don't like us for who we really are. They see us as fulfilling their religion's prophecies and as not yet perfected. Yeah, do you think that might be insulting to them? Do you think that, people who don't have the love of God and don't obey what God actually says are going to take stupid things that Christian Zionists say and be like, oh, okay, yeah, give me more money. Oh, yeah, I just can't wait to die for you. Is the check in the mail? They think your Messiah was a false prophet. They think that Paul was a charlatan who was trying to change their laws. And now you're going to show up and be like, oh, you're going to die for us. We want to hasten our Messiah's coming. Never mind the fact that you're going to suffer. It's just stupidity. What is the deal with these hillbilly Christian Zionists? Are they that clueless and stupid that they would believe that people would be flattered by what it is that they're presenting? It's moronic. And yet Christian Zionists think that Israelis are their best friends, when the dominant feeling is exactly what I just described to you. They think you're stupid. Something is happening in the East right now. Alliances are being formed right now, particularly between India and Israel. So Israel can keep saying that America's its best friend, and America can keep saying it too. But there are alliances being formed right now in the East, based on greed, based on hatred of Muslims, and also based on hatred of Christians. Wake up, because this is what the word says. This image of the Antichrist is going to persecute Christians. This image of the Antichrist is already turning on the United States and Christians. They resent their sugar daddy. You know what happens when you resent your sugar daddy? That resentment festers because you feel obligated and dependent, and no one wants to feel that. And eventually you're going to turn to bite him. That's exactly what's going to happen to this thing, this abomination that Christian Zionists are worshiping. There's a shared hatred from Israelis to Palestinian Christians and Muslims. There is a shared hatred of Indians to Pakistani Christians and Muslims. So look alive, because biblical prophecy is progressing, and America is going to go down. And these will be the powers. That image of the Antichrist, that image that counterfeit Christianity has been worshiping, is the image in Revelation 13 that is going to force those who do not worship it, who do not submit to it, to be killed. And it will force all others to receive the mark of the beast. Read Revelation 13. It's not the Antichrist, it's the image of the Antichrist that has been given breath by the false prophet of the United States. Please discern this message with God.